I let Lori swear at me today, or last week, last Friday. Somebody knows me so well.
All right, so it sounds like we are ready to go.
That's awesome.
Just get the agenda up.
Didn't think I'd get the joke.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and open the meeting. Today is Monday, July 15th, 2024. It is now 7:02 p.m. We're here at the Public Safety Complex in the training room, and this is a meeting of the Select Board in Paxton. I'm going to start by mentioning that we do have an executive session that's going to take place after the regular session pursuant to MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21(2), and we will return to regular session only to adjourn the meeting. First up is I have several consent items, so I'm going to go ahead and read those off. There are 9 of them. If there are no objections, then I'll declare that they have been approved. So number 1 is to approve the meeting minutes from the regular meeting held on June 17th, 2024. Number 2 is to approve the meeting minutes from the regular meeting held on June 27th, 2024. Number 3 is to approve the meeting minutes from the executive session held on June 27th, 2024. Number 4 is to accept the resignation of Jeremy Richards from the Economic Development Committee effective July 1st, 2024. Number 5 is to sign the intermunicipal agreement for the participation in the Central Massachusetts Regional Stormwater Coalition with the town of Shrewsbury. Number 6 is a 1-day liquor license request from Seven Saws for August 1st, 2024 and August 15th, 2024 for the Paxton Recreation Summer Band Series from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the bandstand on the center field. Number 7 is to appoint the following individuals to the Open Space and Recreation Plan Committee: Colin Novick, Paul Sullivan, John Pender-Cudlip, and Jason Lambert for a term ending on June 30th, 2025. Number 8 is to award FY26, FY27 contract to Civic Plus for our annual website cost and maintenance for a total of $6,470.50 over the 2 years. And number 9 is to award the FY25 O2 diesel fuel contract, which the specifics aren't here, but that would be going to R.J. McDonald as the sole bidder. Am I correct? Yes.
Correct.
Okay. Are there any objections to any of the consent items such that we should move them to new business?
So
Julia,
Yeah, go ahead.
on the RJ McDonald, just so everyone knows, the amount of the contract will be not to exceed expected to be $66,080.
Thank you. All right. Hearing no objections, I
So-
declare that those items have passed. All right. So under new business, we have approved year-end transfers as needed. Do we have any transfers, Donna? Just the one that's in here. Let me get to it.
Well, there's 2.
I thought there was 2.
There's 2. I thought there's 2. Yeah, there is.
Yeah, okay. So the first is in the amount of $2,655 coming from the vocational school assessment, which currently carries a balance of $25,511. This is going to legal, which currently holds a $0 balance. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, the second one is a transfer request of $453.82 from the vocational school assessment, which again carries a balance of $25,511, again going to legal. These are for individual bills, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again going to legal, which currently carries a balance of $0. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Excellent. Okay, so next is to discuss FY25, the override, and the special town meeting results, and should we have another special election and another special town meeting. So Heather, I'm gonna leave it to you to kick us off on that. Are you there?
Sorry, I put my microphone down. That doesn't automatically unmute me on this.
Okay.
All right, so back over here. So I did send out to each of the board members, at least once, if not twice last week, a brief memo, which also got posted to the website as part of the information packet for tonight, so everyone has it. Let me just pull it up on my screen. I do not currently have sharing privileges, or I would share it.
I will get it for you. Hold on.
Do you have sharing privileges, Julie, on your
Yep,
side?
I can give it to you. I can give you privileges. Hang on.
Okay.
Can
All right, you should be good.
we maximize her screen?
Yeah,
Just give me one
Scott will need to do
second.
that.
Just so we'll be able to see it.
Back over here.
Scott, if you can hear me, can you maximize that screen? Yep, right there.
Yep, right there.
Perfect.
Perfect. Thank you, Scott.
Okay. Awesome. All right, so let me see if I can make that, can you see that okay on your end? Do I need to make it a little bigger?
It looks okay.
Okay. All right, so I did prepare this memo last week, just with the talk of the possibilities and the question of whether or not the select board would be interested in holding another special election to try again for an override for FY25. And talking in-house with both, mostly Lori for some dates, and also checking with the state on some things. We came up with a couple options and alternatives here. If the select board is interested, we just wanted to lay these out so you have them in front of you to make any decision you're interested in making. The first part here we have is election dates. So essentially there's 3 election date options that would be coming up. One would be the primary election, the state election that is on September 3rd. The second would be the presidential election, which is on November 5th. And then the third would be any other date. So just some pros and cons and some details about each of these is laid out in the memo. So the state primary election, it would cost approximately about $3,500 between ballots, postage, extra poll workers, ballots, programming. The deadline for a decision to be made would be no later than July 30th. That would be 35 days prior. Still, the goal would be to be sooner than that, to give the state a heads up. At this point, my understanding is the state's already started mailing out some of their primary ballots. So those would already be going out before we started our process. The last turnout for a primary election before presidential in that September-November timeframe was about 39%. If you remember, at the last 2 locals we had about over 20 to less than 30% between those two. There's no limits on the ballot itself. Some of the advantages, there's already a state primary election happening. It would be coming up pretty quick. And the beginning of September is the date for most of the layoffs to take place for the police and the part-time fire admin. Disadvantages, this could result in some confusion amongst voters. Both the fact that they essentially have 2 elections to check into if they go to the polls. If they do advanced voting or early voting, they may get ballots at different times, so they might get them at the same time depending on when they request them. People could put things in the wrong envelope. Just some of the possible options. It also would create some additional administrative work for the office staff. After that, we'd have to figure out, leading up to that point, if the select board wanted to go that direction, when we would do a special town meeting. Would it be before the election, or would it be only dependent upon successful results of the election? The second option would be the presidential election. The cost for this is substantially lower at about $100. Lori did a lot of digging and research on this, which was awesome, and she was able to ascertain that we can put a local ballot question on the presidential ballot if we get it in by August 7th under Mass General Law. It allows us to actually do up to 3 separate override questions if we were inclined. And we'd be able to operate under everything that the regular election has. So our question would be on the same ballot as the questions for the state and for voting for president. There'd be no separate process. Everything would be consolidated, and it would already be happening. So The only difference of cost between having the presidential election and adding an override question on there would be about $100, give or take. Ballot limits, as I said, it would allow up to 3 override questions. Advantages, again, it's already going on. Last presidential election, we had about an 85% turnout. So if we're looking for an opportunity to hear from the greatest number of residents, this could potentially provide that opportunity. Disadvantages, it would occur after layoffs are already in effect, and it would benefit the town for only about 50% of the year. Option 3, very similar to the last 2 elections we held. Cost would be about $5,000. We'd have to call it 35 days prior. You can hold it at any time. The only thing to keep in mind is that it would be adding a 3rd election to an already busy election season for the town clerk's office. And we'd have the full cost. Okay, any questions on the election breakdown options? Julia, do you want me to go on to the rest of the memo and then have you guys discuss? You tell me how you'd like this.
I think I'd like for you to talk about the special town meeting as well before we discuss.
Awesome. Okay.
Before you go on though, any questions about the election?
No.
No.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, special town meeting. So if an override passes, as everyone knows, you'd have to have a special town meeting because you don't have success unless you have a successful ballot question and a successful town meeting article. One's to raise the funds, and the town meeting article is to appropriate those funds. Couple notes here, special town meeting needs at least 14 days notice to call it. We're expecting to have a fall town meeting for zoning bylaws and any other loose ends we have. Right now, we've just penciled in November 18th. We wanted to get a date on the books that was good for the town clerk and the moderator, and also was early enough that if we did any changes to any budgetary numbers, it would be in advance of having to set the tax rate by the end of the month and doing the tax recap and setting the tax rate by the end of the month or early December. The cost for most special town meetings is mostly just employee time with minimal supplies. Am I going on to the next piece, Julia, or am I pausing there?
Why don't we pause there?
Okay.
All right, so I'll open this up to discussion among the board. At this point, we're looking at, do we want to have another election for an override? That's, I think, question number 1. Question number 2 is, if you do want to do it, when do we want to do it? And then would we want to then call a special town meeting? It sounds to me like we're going to need a special town meeting anyways, so regardless of whether we choose to consider voting again on another override question.
You're on top.
You can start.
Right. So I certainly want to go for a special election. As soon as I left the June 27th meeting, that was my thought. And I'd like to go for it sooner than later. I'm not for going in August, but I would like to go at least September. The reason being is there's already an election, we can just do a second ballot.
Mm-hmm.
So it's less work. I know it's more money, but I'm sure we can cover that small cost for what we need.
You mean option 2?
So you're thinking doing it during
September.
the primary election?
Yes, September, not August, not the earlier one. Only because I don't think we've got time to
No.
do the numbers. And the reason I think we should go for a special election is because we left the town meeting with people asking us how we can go back and restore budgets that were cut due to the 2 overrides that failed. So I think we owe it to at least the police and fire to restore all the personnel that potentially and have been cut so far. At the very least, I'm not interested in putting money aside for anything else. And I mean, like capital or stabilisation. I think the town's already spoken that they don't want to go that direction, but I think that if the 27th of June meeting has anything to go on, they were certainly wanting the police and fire restored. And I know they talked about the library and recreation, but looking at the numbers, I want to look at the least amount that will pass in order to restore those budgets and let the police and fire do their job. Because at this moment, what is in place will not allow them to do their job. And I think the town deserves better. And I think the employees deserve better as well. And certainly I know there's been some finger pointing that who's at blame, but I think we should try and put that bit aside and try and pass and override that. Again, like I say, restores those budgets.
Okay. Kurt, any thoughts?
So my comment would be, we certainly want to restore services to police, fire, and DPW, because winters aren't getting any easier, although the last couple of years haven't been too bad. We definitely want to get the revision of the bylaws for zoning and planning and get that out there.
So we'll need to do, that's a special town meeting item.
Correct. So we'll definitely have to come up with what is that minimum value for an override that could at least keep those three departments whole and keep the services that we provide to the town currently, as well as push forward the development of the zoning board and the planning board so that we can figure out a way so that in the future we don't keep ending up in this box. But we have to do that fiscally responsibly because we're under a reduced budget, so that's the big question.
Okay. What do you think about timing in terms of doing the election?
My first thought would be option 2.
Which what?
Was
Just-
what, so
if
the,
we can just be
the
more like-
national ballot?
The
So that we can,
presidential?
yeah,
Yeah.
so that we can just have one vote, one election voting time to reduce costs, and then one town meeting to solidify it.
Right.
That's my thought.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think Carol has a valid argument that we want to capitalize a little bit on the momentum of town meeting, where there was a lot of people who got up and said, how do we get a do-over on this? I think our best opportunity, however, is probably at the time of the presidential election. In addition, because you're seeing an 85% turnout for the presidential election. In addition, there's very minimal cost to do it that way. I think there's certainly going to be people arguing that the town has spoken twice, why are you going to incur cost to do it a third time?
Well, can I make a comment to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's going to be people who say, why do you incur costs? Because we've already, we want another bite at the apple. But we've been doing this for 8 months. And the last person that spoke at town meeting summed it up beautifully. Like, if you want to complain, if you want to do over, then you have to stay involved. You have to keep yourself involved. We've done everything as a board, in my opinion, that we can through 20-something plus informational meetings, through our website, through the COA, through every means we can possibly think of to inform people.
Right.
So I don't know what it takes. I mean, I don't know, a blowhorn in the back of a pickup truck going around like 24 hours, 7 days a week. But I think we're really making our due diligence to make the effort to inform. So that's kind of where I sit right now.
Okay. Thoughts on the impact if we were to do it at the time of the presidential election? The concern is that the cuts are already in place. The people who were going to be laid off are laid off at that point. And so I have some concern there. And I think that there's a definite give and take on that issue, right? Because once the damage is done, the damage is done in terms of the people leaving those departments. I don't know how easily they will come back if they're laid off. So that's, I think, a good question for the department heads who are here, maybe, is,
It is, but the town spoke. So the town said what they wanted. You know what I mean? And if the town's uninformed and says what they want, like, how does that become all of a sudden our problem to try to fix? And if I'm sounding a little bit of a red alarm right now, I am, you know? I got on the select board because I wanted some things changed in town. And I've devoted God knows how many hours to try to make those changes because I didn't like what I was seeing. But if you're not going to be involved, if you're not going to show up, if you're not going to vote, and you're going to show up at the 11.5 hour and then complain about it, there's nothing this board can do about that. So unless they see the impact and they want to get involved, I don't know what else to say. I don't know what the answer is.
right.
And that's where the rubber meets the road for all of you who are watching.
But I don't think the intent of this board was to cut people.
It was not our intent. That's what the town spoke for. That is exactly what the town spoke for.
Unfortunately, there's only so much money available in the budget. And I would ask Heather to go through it again, but she's been through it a number of different times in terms of how she arrived at the numbers that she arrived at.
I'm confident in Heather's numbers.
Yeah,
What wasn't really brought out in town meeting and in the budget conversations that happened for months was the state's cut in education funding.
yeah.
And that came directly out of our bottom line. So, you know, write to your congressman, write to the whatever. Why did you cut our regional educational funding? Because that comes from police, fire, DPW, Council of Aging,
Yep.
library funds, everything along the line. You know? So we're left with how do we pick up the pieces? And we've done everything we can to educate the public on that.
So let me ask Mark and Mike that are here to comment about timing with the special town election, because I think that there's some concern there, right? You know, I do think that going to a presidential election or doing it at the time of the presidential election gives you your best information, right? Because then you've got the law of
We've got
large
time to
numbers.
try again,
Yep.
to re-educate,
But,
you know.
but I think everybody is a little bit tired right now, in terms of having to deal with budgetary issues. And I need to also be cognizant of what their departments are going through. And if we come back too soon, what that's gonna do to their departments as well. Because I think
Understood.
that's a,
And I hope there's 5,300 households watching this tonight.
So, Mark, do you mind chiming in? Just come up and find a microphone. Wherever you're comfortable.
Well, good evening. Thank you for coming. We're at the will of the people. You know, I agree with Kirk that the citizens that came out to vote spoke. However, the fallout from that is astronomical right now. It went from bad to worse because as my offices see that we're cutting, they're sitting in the station, layoffs are coming. We've served the 2 officers that are going to be getting laid off. They're already applying other departments, and they have interviews set up. Furthermore, I have 4 senior officers that have applied elsewhere. These officers want to protect the citizens of Paxton. The town, the citizens in these offices deserve better than the service we're providing. And once these 2 officers leave that are getting laid off, they're never coming back, ever. And if I lose any of my senior guys, they're never coming back. And the likelihood to replace them is slim to none. Because once the layoffs go into effect, nobody's going to leave a steady job to come to Paxton.
Right.
And again, this is the reality. We're not crying wolf. We're not trying to use, oh my God, this is what's going on. It's reality. We're not out patrolling. We are sitting around waiting for a call. That is not what these guys want to do. They want to be out there deterring crime. That's what police officers want to do. This is driving them nuts. Let's face it, none of us want to go through this anymore. We don't want to go through another session. I surely don't. God knows, with the online stuff and the beating we're taking, none of us want to go through that. But this has to be fixed. And I'm going to turn to the select board, to the finance committee, and to our citizens to fix it. Because the police and fire and DPW, and we all work together. We're all taking a hit here. And your service is second to none from what all of these guys provide, and women. And the longer we wait, the more officers I'm going to lose. And all the overrides in the world can pass. If I don't have the officers to put on the street, it's not going to matter. And so that's all I have to say. It's not a bright future, but for us, the sooner that we can get something passed, the likelihood that maybe I can retain one or two of the officers that are looking elsewhere. And we'll just try to minimize our damage.
Okay.
So, Kirk?
So can I ask a simple question? Can
Sure.
you look around the room in here?
Yep.
And tell me how many people that are not town employees are present?
Well, pretty much, I would say all of them.
10?
Yeah, I know. Believe me, I know. How do you get them involved? God knows I reached out to personal friends of mine and asked them to please get involved, because this is serious stuff. Paxton
is.
isn't, Paxton as a community isn't immune to crime. I say it all the time.
We're
you
not
know?
isolated at all. We're a pass-through community, and
Yeah.
a lot of stuff passes through this.
Absolutely. And the reason that we are the way we are is because these guys are out there hammering the streets,
100%.
deterring crime. And to take them off the streets and put them into the station, it's a disservice to everybody. And, I'm hoping that we have a better turnout next time around, and I'm hoping people are watching. And we'll see what happens, whenever you decide on the next date. So.
So would you prefer September or would you prefer November?
Myself, I'd prefer September. I would, just because my notices, I know they're losing in September. They're gone. I don't even know if they stay until September.
Yeah.
I will tell you that I've already been contacted by 3 chiefs in regards to our offices, in that 2 of them were concerned. They were wondering what the heck's going on, because Paxton doesn't apply to many other places. We had that one, time when we had a few leave, but to have 3 or 4 apply at once to one department raises a flag. And those chiefs reached out. Our offices are high commodity. Whether people want to believe that or not, these guys are not stereotypical police officers. We hold them to a higher standard. So, anything we can do to retain them, I think needs to be done. And I'm hoping that everybody can work together and come up with a solution.
So I stand by my September 3rd date.
Any
Thanks,
other
Mark.
questions?
Mike, come on up.
Thank you, Mark.
Good evening, Mike Mingitori, Fire Chief, Town of Paxton. I don't know if I can really follow what Mark said. Police, fire, DPW, we're a pretty well-oiled machine. Right now, we're not. And I'll give you a quick little glimpse. Special town meeting, I kind of went over how many second ambulance calls we gave away last year out of around 50-something. It was 8. We are 2 weeks into July. I've given away 3 because I don't have the staff anymore. July 1st was probably the worst day of my life. I had to fill out 14 layoff notices to residents of this town. Dedicated men and women who, yeah, they do this job as a second job, but they're always here for everybody in town. That was hard. Yeah, we retained career staff, but we can only do so much. Instead of sending 4 out on the truck right now, we're sending 2. Saturday night, we had a motor vehicle accident in Lower Pleasant Street. It was my deputy chief and myself, with 4 patients in that car, plus the on-duty staff of 2 in the ambulance. We were only able to transport 2 out of that. Rutland had to come in and transport 2. I'm being told the other involved party in that accident made it back to Rutland and had to be transported by Holden. It's a big domino effect. Not only does it affect our revenue and ultimately your taxes next year, it's affecting the area. Morale is in the toilet. We were a strong department of just about 40 people. Right now, we are just barely scraping by with about 22. I've had some resignations. I have at least 1 full-time member seeking employment in another department. It has never happened other than to the city of Worcester over the last 11 years. So it's tough. I'd like to just get back to where we were last year at a little over 1.2 million, which would take about another 80,000. So I'm not looking for much, but I think if we can do this in September, we can start getting the firefighters, the part-time EMTs, part-time paramedics back out on the road and delivering the service that we once did.
Thank you. Any questions for Mike?
No. Thanks, Mike.
Okay. Well, you heard from 2 department heads. They're struggling.
DPWs do know better.
And it's, I assume DPW,
They're,
right?
they're
you're the
probably in
liaison.
worse shape.
So the question, I think, has been soundly answered, whether to do it sooner rather than later. I think the answer is sooner.
So what was the cost of doing it in
So
September?
the cost of doing it in September, I believe, was $3,500. That covers the cost of ballots, postage, extra poll workers, and programming.
And
The
that-
deadline for
and
that would be
come-
July 30th at 5 PM.
And that would come from where? I think
That's
I
what
think
we've got to ask
Heather was
now.
trying to
Yeah.
chime in. I saw her hand fly up there.
Go ahead, Heather.
Oh,
That's Lori.
I was just going to say yes, but again, sooner. Lori might have the date on some more specifics as far as getting things in for timing relative to the programming of the cards. I know she's on and smiling back, so she's listening.
Go ahead, Lori, if you have more information for us.
Yeah, so there's a few things about the September date. First of all, I am sitting next to all the ballots for the September 3rd election right now. So all the ballots are being mailed out over the next couple of days. And at the same time, ES&S, my software company, is programming the memory sticks right now. And they're aware of this potential election coming up. But I don't want to run into the situation where they send me the memory stick to start this election, and then I have to send it back to them because we're adding programming to it. That's going to increase our costs. I also, there's just a time crunch on this because I need to get the information as soon as possible so I can do all the things that have to be done before an election, all the testing and all that, the equipment. So,
So-
I don't know if if we're gonna go forward with this, if you're prepared to put something together tonight, or if that's not possible, I don't know.
Laurie, do we have to come up with the actual ballot question tonight, or can we wait till our next meeting on the 29th?
The 29th would be I don't know if I can legally do it, maybe, but it's gonna be really pushing as far as, I don't even know how I would do that with ES&S.
Okay,
because they're, like I said, they're already programming the sticks.
because we got a deadline is saying
Because we don't
30th of
have,
July.
we don't have the actual amount for the override
Yeah, we
question.
need to figure out what the amount is. The rest of the
So-
wording is all
That's all pretty cut and paste.
dictated,
but-
right? But
Yeah. And the other thought that was going through my mind is where we just had 2 votes that were no. And I know town meeting people are all for it, but there's only 4% of our population that shows up for town meeting. So if we're expecting a different answer this time, I don't know how we can get the word out more, but to me, I don't think, the people who know about it understand how important it is, but I don't think enough people I don't think enough people know about it. And it's the same exact voters that we're sending these out to, because of the vote by mail, they asked for all election this year. So the same people who said no the first 2 times, I don't know if they're gonna answer something different this time, is a concern I have.
Unless they have the information well in advance.
right. So hearing that, do you have any new concerns about September, the September date?
I do. I think it's just gonna be history repeating itself. It's as hard as that is to say, and the impact that has for Mike and for, for Mark and for Travis, I don't know that we have the time or even understand how to inform the voters what the impact's gonna be without getting a 3rd no vote in a row. And we don't have the numbers to present for an override in time. We won't have in time
We'd have to call another meeting.
to get that in front of everyone in the public.
So as of right now, our next meeting is scheduled for the 29th.
Could we meet next week?
We could absolutely call another meeting. That's, I think, well within our ability to do, if we want to try and push.
I'm willing to try it, but then will we have enough time to inform people before the mail-in vote to make an informed decision?
So should we have a special town meeting before the election?
So if we had a special town meeting before the election, in order to try to help inform, that's going to push us off.
It will. So that's gonna be a cost that we don't have the funds to necessarily.
Heather-
No, there's not much cost to
Yeah,
a
the
special
meeting
town
itself
meeting.
doesn't cost much, it's the election that costs. Heather and Lori, if we were to do a special town meeting in advance of an election, what's the earliest date?
14 days from the day you call it.
So
Or the
14
day it gets posted.
When it's get
So,
posted
you know,
14
usually
days.
if you're doing a meeting on like a Monday night, the earliest it could be posted is tomorrow, so 14 days out from tomorrow.
Okay,
But if we're only having a
Which
4%
would be-
turnout, how,
I don't know what the 30th, I have
How
no
effective
idea
is that
what day of the week that is, though. I guess it's a Tuesday, right? Let's do math here,
it's
Heather.
probably a
Sorry.
Tuesday, yeah.
I mean, this
Yeah.
last town meeting was pretty well pushed out there. And we
Yeah.
still only got 4%,
Right,
according to.
But it
Laura.
also, just keep in mind that although it doesn't cost anything, it is time and it is coordination with the town clerk's schedule, right? So we'd have to make sure the moderator's available, the town clerk's available, and then you even have to have 10 days prior to that. So looking at the calendar, 7, 8, 9, 10, it looks like, Lori, if it was the 30th, I think it would put it as a Sunday as last day to register to vote, which might make the town clerk's office not the happiest.
Wait, I'm sorry, what are those dates again you're saying?
They're just asking the absolute soonest we could do a town meeting, and if they called it tonight and we had the warrant ready, which I guess theoretically I could scramble in the next 30 minutes and type one, hypothetically speaking, and it was posted tomorrow, which is the 16th, 14 days out would be the 30th, which would be Tuesday.
But we still wouldn't have the override amount.
We've got
We need-
August. We've got
right,
all
right.
August.
So I guess the question is, if we want to move forward with an election on September 3rd, when would we need to have, what would be the time frame to have a special town meeting before that?
Anytime in August,
Anytime in August?
14 days posting.
Right. So,
14 days
couldn't
out
go-
from the day you call it,
So you couldn't do it past August 16th,
or a day gets posted.
That's fine.
because that's gonna put you into September.
So we could call a special in August, a special town meeting in August,
We could call it.
with the plan to move toward a September 3rd election date. Trying
Yes,
to,
but you'd already have to have the election called by that point.
Yeah, realize that.
Because you have July 30th as the last day you can call the election.
Yeah.
yeah.
We're
So-
talking
Ballot.
the-
But this would take a recommendation from the finance board,
Yep.
and we would have to know what the override amount would be to basic resources to the fire, police, and DPW. Like the bottom line, just flat line, to keep your resources that you have, right?
Mark Love, when is your next meeting?
July 23rd, next Tuesday.
So you would have time to put that on your agenda.
The agenda's written, it's ready to be posted. We're trying to find a room to have the meeting.
Okay.
But the date is set, the time is set, the place is not set.
So, Mark and Mike, what would you be able to have your bottom line level fund budgets
It's already in.
to Mark by then? And then we'd have to reach out to Travis and
Yeah.
see what he can do.
I mean, that information should be readily accessible in terms of what,
It should be.
What they would
But
need.
shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Yeah. So finance would be meeting on July 23rd. And then, so we would need to meet after that, or potentially call a meeting at the same time to have a discussion about the override number. And then we have to get that information to Lori before July 30th
Correct.
in order to consider an election on September 3rd.
Yes, keeping in mind, as Lori said, that's gonna potentially, what's gonna happen is she's gonna get the ballot programming back from ES&S, and then she's gonna have to send it back to them.
Laura, do you roughly know what that reprogramming cost would be?
I can't hear him.
He asked if you know what the reprogramming, is there a cost associated with reprogramming from ES&S?
I'm sure there is. Programming is one of the most expensive parts of an election. I wish that they were available at this hour to call, because I don't know, like, can they wait till the 30th to send it? I'm hoping. I'm
You
just
have-
not positive.
Do you have a feel, an idea?
My other thought is, just like where everyone else, my budget was cut as far as like my assistance hours. And I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to get, physically put together this election with,
No staff.
without funds.
Yeah,
Trying to figure that piece out.
right, staffing, yep.
Could
Can we
we
go to the reserve?
transfer it from Bay Path?
Go ahead, Mark.
So I hesitate to speak because I want to preface it by saying that I'm not speaking officially as a finance committee. I'm speaking as a finance committee member. And I think there's a couple of things to balance here, which adds to the problem. But the balance is that we're all convinced in terms of the impact that this has on public safety. There's nothing more that I could say that Mike and Mark have not already said, number one. Number two, we still need to be aware that 2 overrides have failed. I'm not going to get into the number of voters who showed up, but if I'm not mistaken, more people showed up for a lower override to defeat it than the larger override. There's something to be said for that. Some are saying taxes are too high. Some are saying, I didn't know the impact of my no vote. These are all conflicting types of sentiments and emotions, but I'm picking up specifically on on Kirk's point, that we need an override that makes those three departments whole. Keeping in mind that that number is $800,000 to make them whole. And unofficially, I would submit to you that 800,000 would be a third field override number. So we need to work together as to what that number is. And I'm speaking from just recently, the override was 950, the deficit was 835, of which police, fire, and DPW was 800,000 of that. And we added to stabilization and we added to capital depreciation. So I don't think that an override at 800 is going to pass, so we need something lower than that, much lower than that, that's going to give the assistance to police, fire, and DPW at the same time.
And I think that we are asking them to submit what's the minimum they could work with and restore service.
Right.
And I'm sure Heather will work with them to try to figure out if we can get that done. The other thing to keep in mind too is that if we go to a special election September 3rd, by the time that everything gets put into place, you're already several months into the fiscal year, and so you can kind of prorate that amount as well. So that should help bring the number down, hopefully.
And we wouldn't really have time to turn around and try it again in November.
Well, don't get,
We wouldn't
we give
have-
60 days.
we wouldn't have a lot of
notice.
Yeah.
So we haven't really got any extra.
So if we went for September 3rd, that would be it. You wouldn't be able to
I
piggyback
kind
on
of
the
think that
presidential
that's
at that
what's
point.
going to happen. So I guess the ballot question is, do you want to reduce services or do you want to raise taxes? It's pretty straightforward.
Well, yeah, right. I mean, the language is dictated by statute, so.
Understand that, but
Excuse me, Julia?
Yeah, go ahead, Lori.
We would not be able to go again in November, because the deadline for November is August 7th, if we're gonna do it. So by September 3rd, will it be too late?
Right. Yep, that's what we were just saying, is that once you.
Oh, sorry.
Yep, that's okay. Once you decide to go with September 3rd, you're piggybacking on the presidential election off the table.
so if we go with the presidential election, our departments are going to lose staff.
Yep.
Maybe not as much because we have a little hope and they know we're trying.
Don't think so.
Yeah, I think that people who are gonna leave are gonna leave. You know, you heard from both of them, they've already got people with feelers out. They're already trying to
I don't-
find a more
and I don't
stable
blame them.
financial footing.
But can we save 2/3? You know, I don't know what
I'm thinking the number's going to be around 400,000. No more.
but that's not gonna, that's 2/3 of what they both need.
I think the bigger lift for us is going to be putting all the pieces in place to make it happen for September 3rd. The number, I think, will sort itself out. The department heads will get us their information about what they think is the minimum they could use in order to restore their departments for the remainder of the fiscal year. We'll sit down with finance and try and come up with the right number to put on the ballot. That's the easy part. The hard part is going to be, how do we make sure that, you know, poor Lori isn't gonna pull all of her lovely hair out trying to get to this
No, it's gonna be how do we get the town
and get
all
information out to the
the
town. Yeah.
citizens informed.
Right. So, Lori, with the challenges associated with a September 3rd election, can you, I'm gonna ask you to give me a sort of a gut reaction on how hard that's going to be. Because we gotta balance that against the loss of staff.
So, I'm sorry, I'm struggling with the audio on this call, because, I keep bouncing back and forth between. Hold on 1 second. I'm trying to, hold on. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yep, we can
Yes.
hear you.
Okay, sorry. I had feedback, so I was trying to fix the audio on my end. Yeah, so there's quite a few struggles with the September date. There's obviously immediately mailing out a whole nother set of ballots. There's going to be some question as to voters are going to make mistakes because that's just happens at every election. So I think Heather had already mentioned you're going to have the issue of the voter putting the ballots in the wrong envelope. I'm imagining that there's going to be voters who are going to take both ballots, stick them in the same envelope. And you won't know that until you open it on election day. So there's going to be all those pieces.
If that happens, Lori, does that invalidate their vote?
No, it shouldn't. I just,
extra work.
it would prevent me from giving them time to fix the problem because I won't know until it's, and there's questions I have for the state that I don't know the answer to yet. So like if they stick both
ballots were
envelopes in
mailed
this,
for September?
both ballots in the same envelope and only sign it once, I'm thinking it's probably okay. I'm just not positive. I gotta double check with the state.
Okay.
I will need to get extra poll workers. I did already ask the elections attorney, and we do need to have 2 separate check-ins for this. So it is definitely more complicated, but I do understand that there's a lot at stake, and I don't think my problems are a big enough thing to prevent you from doing what you guys need to do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. That's super helpful.
Julia.
So the next question is the 3,500. We got to pay for it if we're going to do that, the September 3rd.
We're gonna have to transfer it from somewhere.
Heather, you have any ideas where that 3,500 is going to come from?
Sorry, we'd have to go to reserve is all I can think of. We can pull from the elections line for now, but it's only gonna hold us so far.
So that comes down to finance to approve a reserve transfer. And I know your committee's not here. You're just one member, the chair, though. Any feeling on whether that would be approved?
We never opine on requests before they're made, so I would encourage a request to be made.
Okay,
So, could we get some public comment, because there's 10 public here,
sure,
on what their thoughts are?
yeah. Are there any members of the public who'd like to provide an opinion on the timing of this and how we want to go about it? Come up to, just come up to a microphone, or if somebody can pass her one.
There's one right here.
Yeah,
Yep, just pass it along.
and then we know who you are, but if you can just introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you. Joanna McGugan, 8 Camelot Drive. I don't have a comment so much as a question. So if we do have an override vote in the fall, at whatever point, are we still going to be back in the same place next spring and have to do this all over again?
Yes.
And that's a given, that's definitely going to happen?
Yeah.
Probably.
Okay, so we're just hoping for a different outcome this time to sort of ride that
It-
wave until the spring.
It'll give us a little bit of a relief until next year, and then next year we'll have to see where the budget pans out, but the expectation is that we're gonna start in a deficit next year again.
Okay, all right, thanks for clarifying that. And my other comment was that I guess from what I see, just like observing people, there seems to be a reluctance to vote for the override, but the same people that tend to vote no are also very worried about the cuts happening. So I think there's like a cognitive dissonance there that everybody's seeing, and I don't know that more information is going to resolve that. I don't know what causes it, but I kind of am on board with, I don't know if it'll be a different outcome. I'm hopeful. I would love to see, these services restored. Thank you.
Thanks, Joanna. Anybody else who would like to?
Anybody else while the mic's in the air?
Comments, thoughts?
I'm Mark Williams, 9 Burton Mars Circle. Seems to me the problem is getting the information out to people. I know November's a bad time, but like you said, it's $100. Maybe a lot of people don't have access to the computers or go online, like an everyday thing. Maybe mail, it might be foolish, but maybe you could spend money mailing flyers to the households. That way everybody would be informed. You know, instead of spending the $3,500 to do it in September, you spend $100 in November. It's a shame that we might lose people, but maybe we get the word out there to more people so we can have a different outcome with this vote.
So there's pretty clear restrictions on information we can mail out.
Yeah.
We can't say, if you don't vote for this, this is gonna
I'm
happen.
not saying that. Maybe you could word it where they would understand the impact of not having the override. I don't know.
We're struggling to figure that out too.
Heather,
That seems to me is the problem.
I mean,
You
we
can't
did-
get the
we did-
information out to enough people.
Yeah.
I mean, you could put signs out front and everything else, but it seems to me you gotta get it to them.
We did over 20 informational meetings.
it's a
We did
struggle.
meetings at the Council of Aging, we did meetings at all the departments, we did,
Yep,
Yeah, but-
so we had a number of
it's
different
on the
meetings, but,
website.
Yeah.
It's,
The
And
thing
you're
is,
not-
everybody looks at their mail every day.
right, and you're not
That's
the
the only
only
thing I
one,
can think of is where everybody might look at the
Yep.
flyer.
right.
You know, there's a lot of
if
people
we
that
could
don't
do
go
an email
online.
blast and we had an email for everyone in town, that'd be great, but we're really restricted on what we can even say in that email blast.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Heather, can you just remind us of what the restriction is with mailing things?
Sure, so,
Go ahead.
there's two different rule sets at play. One is the conflict of interest laws, and one is campaign, political, and finance. So we can't use any town materials, employees' time, photocopying beyond a reasonable number of just information sheets. So anything to send out. So we can't even do mailings. What we can do, right, is we could theoretically put a flyer, if the light company was up for it, in their mailing that simply said, here's a date, right? This is the upcoming election date. Here's the upcoming special town meeting date. We could do that, right? It's completely neutral. It gives information, reminds people when it is. They can stick it on the fridge and what have you. Some towns have tried putting a little more information. In my memo, I actually attached a copy of one of the flyers Dudley had available. For those who may not recall, I talk about it a lot when we talked about overrides this year. Dudley had 2 unsuccessful overrides, and then they were successful in part on the third try, and that was last August of 2023, sorry. So they had a little bit more of an approach to it, and they gave a little bit more information, including specific tax impact number. And then they also kind of said, this is what you get with this. This is, what would happen without it. But even that would still have to go through legal to make sure that we're still walking the lines correctly and making sure we're not violating anything or putting anyone in jeopardy. Violations. This last time, I believe there might have been mailings that went out, but those were done by non-town employee entities, so either union groups or friends of groups, which are permitted to do a lot more.
Okay. Sarah Ford, I see you have your hand raised.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, thank you, first of all, for doing this. You guys, thank you for trying to do this. I was just going to ask, would members of the community be able to organize any kind of campaign, door-to-door, our own flyers, our own sort of stuff? I mean, I've done phone banks before, I've done campaigning, I've done that stuff. Would that be something that would be allowed? And also, because I'm an election worker, would I be allowed to participate in that?
So as far as what residents and citizens in their own time can do, an example for those who are interested, there was a community group in the town of Arlington. I believe it was called Vote Yes for Arlington. And that's essentially what they did, right? They established themselves. I believe they might have even gone so far as to get a 501c3 status. But they had their own website, all of their own materials. They did mailing materials and so forth. So those are always options. As far as the specific piece of being an election worker relative to it, I would say that's something you would have to call, conflict of interest yourself, the ethics board, just to make sure that there was no violation there. But in general, private citizens can pretty much do anything. It gets a little dicier when you're a more specific employee. I mean, you know, with the election worker, that's one thing, but it's not usually all the time, but it has a special nature to it. But you should call and check for yourself, just to make sure that you're clear.
Okay, thanks. I've talked to them so many times, so I think from what they've told me, I would be fine. It's just I can't use any resources, or like I can't go to the town hall and be like, hey, Laurie, just gonna make some photocopies.
And that would be awesome, because
That's what we need.
That would involve the community
That's what we need.
beyond the 10
My
people
husband's
that are
gonna
here
get really
tonight.
mad at me if I start doing this, but I'm sick of this.
But honestly, that's what we needed from the beginning, was a group of citizens that wanted to start a coalition. I see a hand raised from Rachel Bennett.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we
Yes.
can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I'm new to this. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I will say I am guilty. I'm a new person in town barely, and I'm very new to all of these town processes. And I learned a lesson. I could have paid closer attention, but again, I'm new to this, and it was a little too late by the time the override failed. And I've learned my lesson. I really want to be more involved. I'll do what I can to help get the word out. I'll print flyers, I'll walk door to door, I'll do what I can. But I was at that special meeting as well, and I saw many people, I think who were also new to this process, who just didn't understand the ramifications of the override not passing. I respect the people who did and who still said no to, even though I disagree with it. But again, I think just trying to get the knowledge out, and if as a private citizen I can do that, I'm happy to do it. And I agree with the September 3rd date. I know it's a lot of work, but I'd rather try to do what we can to prevent losing these people, because even though it's a little bit more expensive, the cost of not having them or also trying to recruit new people is also expensive. And I think we should just do what we can to try to get it passed. So that's my 2 cents, and I appreciate everything that you've done. And again, I learned my lesson. I'll pay more attention next time. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, and tell all your friends. All of them.
If you didn't hear Kirk, he said, tell all your friends. All right. So at this point, I think I would like to ask for a motion for a special town election date.
I'll make a motion for September 2nd,
Third.
or 3rd, special town election date.
I'll second that.
All those in favor, any further discussion first?
With a override amount to be determined over the next couple weeks.
Correct.
I think that's the only caveat I had.
Okay. So a motion and a second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. So we're going to call that September 3rd special election. So now the next question is special town meeting. If we are looking at a September 3rd date, and this is a question we may not be able to answer tonight, because ultimately, if you want to call a special town meeting before the election, we need to confirm that our town moderator and our town clerk will be available.
Can we meet next week and let Laurie do any own work she needs to do?
Yep. So Lori, can you look at some dates in August and see if there are dates that might be available between you and Roger? And then
Yes.
we'll circle back with you to get that information.
Will you be able to meet sooner than the July, what date was it? Sorry.
Yeah, we're gonna meet next week, Laurie.
July
Next-
29th was your
Yeah.
next meeting.
Next week.
Just because
Next week.
I'm anxious about now the programming for this.
Next week.
So we're gonna plan to meet next week, Lori.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
yep. So the week of July 22nd, are you guys available on Monday?
It might be Zoom, but I'll make myself available for sure.
Do we want to wait until after finance meet?
They're meeting Tuesday, right?
Yeah,
Oh, finance is meeting on Tuesday. Yeah, and so we want
because then we can
feedback
maybe get a,
from
We
them.
have to
Yeah,
get
maybe get
something
an
from
override
them
number.
before we
Yep.
can do anything.
So we could meet,
I can meet any day on Zoom, any evening on Zoom.
we could post a meeting for the time of the finance committee meeting. I would, as long as Mark is okay with that, that way we can have a joint discussion about the override number.
Does that give us enough time for the posting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's tomorrow.
no, next week.
Oh, next week.
Yeah.
I'm inclined to let us meet by ourselves first.
So no joint discussion.
Well, I don't want to put it that way. I think we'd like to have a discussion, ourselves. That's just a unofficial personal
Can we meet the next night?
suggestion.
Okay.
Could you meet the next day?
Wednesday,
Could you meet
the-
on the 24th?
I could meet on the 24th.
Okay.
Like I said, if I can zoom in, I can be here.
Yeah, we can always make Zoom available. That's fairly simple. We're doing it right now. So,
So that's the 24th.
so we'll plan to try for the 24th. Do we have, Heather, will you be available on the 24th? Which is a Wednesday.
As far as I know, as of right now.
Okay. And Donna, are you available on the 24th? All right. And hopefully Scott is also available on the 24th. So we're going to go with the 24th. Is the room available on the 24th? Next question.
If not, there's Zoom.
I believe it was. The reason we didn't pick the 24th is we couldn't get a quorum on the 24th.
Got it. Okay. So the 24th, so we'll plan then 7 o'clock on the 24th for us. And that way we'll have some information from finance, although not a joint discussion unfortunately, but we'll at least have their feedback and input into our thought process. Okay. So we've moved beyond those two, that issue in terms of the ballot. So then the next question is town meeting date.
Can we decide that?
Oh, that's right, and Lori's looking into that, and we'll work on that at the next meeting. Okay, good, all right. So Heather, that's back to you now, the next item on your memo.
Okay, let's hear, let me reshare the screen. Can you see my screen now?
We can.
Is everyone seeing my screen now, Julia?
Yes, we're
Yes.
seeing it.
Okay, sorry. All right, so potential amount for ballot question. So these are just some basic ballpark pieces. We'd have to figure out very specific, and I believe the select board's already covered a little bit of the conversation this evening of what we want to include, whether this is everything, whether it's prorated, whether it's just certain departments. We have here, the 950, as Mark mentioned, was the amount that was previously requested. 835.5, the amount of the original budget request that by what was out of balance. The prorated amount, so if we did just, I think Julia, you alluded to this, just 3/4 of what was needed, considering we wouldn't have this until the end of September. 626,625. The next amount would be if we looked at the November date for an election. And then again, we could go back to amount only for large items, 341,975. That's again, just a rough ballpark. That is not one I've reviewed with FD and PD at this point, or another figure. So it really comes down to what should be included, and how we back into that, whether it's a baseline number and then we figure out the proportion split, or whether it's specific things to focus on. Rolling right into the next piece, just because it's very closely related to this, is the form of the budget question. So we generally have done everything as a all or nothing question. And it's still my strongest recommendation that we continue to do that. I think doing anything else generally pits departments against each other, and it doesn't leave a good feeling for anyone. That being said, I'm trying to make sure we present all options to the select board so you have everything before you. I alluded earlier to Dudley. So Dudley went for an override twice. They both failed. They went a third time, and they ended up breaking it down into essentially a menu override, right? 5 separate questions. Each question led to a different item. So public and safety was one, highway was one, town hall administration, library, and the schools. The highway administration questions failed, the remaining ones passed. Again, it's an option, just less favorable to do. If we were to split it, you could do something like public safety, police and fire, or public safety, police, fire, DPW. Library and rec could be their own, or some combination of it. It's just food for thought. I know there's been a lot of discussion when we've had town meetings, as well as when we've had select board meetings, about folks who seem to articulate interest in being able to vote for specific things, and that would give that opportunity. And then the last piece here would just be, if we do proceed, and it sounds like we are, with the September special election and a special town meeting at some point, question become, what are we going to do for getting the information out as far as what the town can do? We've done information sessions. This last override, we just did one information session that had a really good turnout, had a large number of people who tuned in on YouTube and ended up watching it at a later date. So that is all I have in my memo. Are there any other questions?
Any questions for Heather? No.
No.
Okay, so thinking about that, given that Finance will be meeting on the 23rd and then we'll be meeting on the 24th, is there any feedback that you want to give to Finance before they discuss a number and then send that back to us? Do we want to say, as a board, do we want to provide our thought process on what should be included in this new amount? I know we've kind of talked a little bit already about DPW, fire, and police being included in this amount, or would you rather do something like Heather was mentioning, where I can't say that I'm in favor of providing a menu, but
I'm not in favor of a menu.
no.
Nor I. I do think that Council of Aging should be considered in this as well, though.
Did they have any cuts?
They didn't have any cuts.
They didn't? Okay.
They lost their van drivers, so that concept was.
Okay, so we traded a van driver to balance their budget. Okay.
So what's your feeling? Is this, do we want to say that this, what we would like as a board is for this override number to reflect restoring budgets only to specific departments, restoring budgets overall, or should there be more than one question? Should there be a question that's, we restore budgets overall, and then a second question to give them the option of only police, fire, and DPW? Just trying to,
Well, given that we've had 2 bites at the apple and lost, I'm thinking it's basic services, which is police, fire, and DPW.
yeah. Yeah.
By then, we're going to be going into winter.
Mm-hmm.
Snow's going to be an issue. Roads are going to be an issue.
Yeah,
And Travis needs all the help he can get right now.
right.
I think we should let the finance make their own decision based on a revised budget that would be needed. But personally, I'm looking at restoring police and fire and anything else that is important that the town administrator thinks is necessary at this stage. And that can be whatever she determines, but I'm still thinking that the number needs to be 400,000 or below
Yeah.
as the override. So,
So this is the feedback, right? So this is what we would hope that would get back to finance. You heard Kirk and Carol. My thought is very similar. I think it should be kept basic. I don't believe. Bless you. I think it should be kept basic. I don't believe we should be offering more than one question. I think we should make it simple. I think, to me, we prioritize the departments that are losing people. Because
Absolutely.
once you lose
Personnel.
people, that affects so much, right? I don't know. I think much of what was cut out of the DPW's budget is stormwater.
and the barriers, safety
But
barriers.
that's going to come back and bite us hard.
But we can address that next year in a different way.
Can we?
Yes.
Yes.
So I'm not as inclined, because I don't think DPW has been affected quite the same way. If we're trying to keep the number low, I think police and fire are,
No, but we're 1 plow truck short of a full road right now.
But that's not what we're doing here. We're doing personnel. we're restoring
I
personnel.
understand that, but that's part of their budgets. So,
Equipment isn't.
But possibly, maybe there's a smaller amount, Kirk, right? That doesn't include
There could be.
stormwater, that gets them to where they need to be effective. And maybe that should be included, right?
That's why I say leave it with the town administrator to
Correct, yeah.
find those
okay.
items.
Yeah.
It could be DPW. I'm not saying where it could be.
I'll defer
but-
to the finance committee and Heather in their meetings.
Yeah. So Heather, ball's back in your court. You heard the feedback from us.
Yes, can you, I'm sorry, the audio was not that great tonight.
Yeah.
Carol, the number you were you saying 100,000 or 400,000?
400 other.
400, she said.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I appreciate the dialogue that's going on. I'm sure everybody that's listening to it appreciates the dialogue, but I think the process should be Heather meeting with the town departments, that coming to finance making a recommendation to the
That's
think that's
what
we
I just said.
I think that's what we've said.
Yep.
It wasn't clear in terms of what I was hearing, but
Sorry. That's what I just said.
to
what I
underscore, I think that should be the process.
Yep. So that's
Otherwise,
fine.
you could be here all night,
No.
and it could be something that department heads or the town administrator of finance doesn't agree with, so.
Yeah. So Heather, like I said a minute ago before Mark spoke, the ball is back in your court to try to come up with a number, ideally less than 400,000, according to what Carol has provided her opinion on in terms of a number that might pass. And we'd like to see certainly police and fire restored in terms of their functionality. And then Kirk is also would like to see additional to try to get DPW to a point where they're effective.
Correct.
We'll see what we can do.
Okay.
Can I make one
Yeah,
comment,
go ahead.
though? I don't know that 400 is going to restore the services for fire and police, so
We'll have to see what it comes back at.
they've kind of already told us what they need to
Yeah.
maintain their departments.
And maybe there's, separate options, right? So maybe Heather comes up with a few different options. She presents those to finance, and we'll see what finance comes up with.
Well, and
Heather, can I ask one question?
Can you hear Carol, Heather?
Heather,
Yes.
what number did we have for unemployment in the budget, FY25 budget?
I think it whittled down to.
78,000.
once we took PD out of it, I want to say it whittled down to like 67,000, give or take.
So the 67.
So, yeah, we would play with, we would look at the full picture, so we'd be able to move money on those pieces.
Thank you.
all right, that helped.
All right, good. So we're in a good place. Peter, go
Can I
ahead.
ask a question, please?
Yes.
Could you please define functionality? Because somebody's saying that the policeman sitting here in the station responding to 911 calls is functional. Personally, I would think functionality would be level service to FY24. Those are just opinions. Could you please define it as a board so that when we leave here, we have an idea of what you're thinking?
My opinion is to restore everything we've lost, so that the chief can function and they are patrolmen and not clerks. So that's my intention.
Thank you.
Yep, and just to clarify, when I said functional, I was referring more to the DPW on that end of things, because there was 235,000 that was included in that budget that was all stormwater, completely stormwater. And I think that the DPW can function without that number in terms of clearing snow, et cetera. So I just was trying to be more specific around what number we would be restoring to DPW because of that stormwater piece. But I agree with Carol where we're talking about the other departments that have lost people. We want to see them back to where they were.
So it'd be
So
level services.
So it's all public safety.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But without taking care of stormwater and we're out of compliance, then we risk being fined by the state, and
We do.
without funds from anything else, that puts us in a big hole.
So
it's
we'll
a
be
balance.
having to visit that in the fall,
We're probably no worse than any other town.
but there's a lot of other
It
towns.
doesn't
who are the
matter,
same.
we're not every other
Same.
town,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I'm just worried about Paxton.
So, all right. Moving on. Get back to the beginning.
Just see this.
So we've discussed
Yeah.
the factors related to the override, special town meeting, another election. So Heather, if we can move on to the fall special town meeting, the proposed date is November 18th, although I think we are looking at doing something in August instead. Can you let us know what other things you were thinking of putting on that meeting? And would you still be able to put those things on that meeting if it were to be held in August?
No, they're not gonna be ready till November.
Okay.
So we'd have to still have a November meeting. The zoning bylaw materials take a while. Planning board's got to go through them once they're finalized and legal takes a look. It's going to be several months of their meetings for hearings. And then we're also looking at, to the allusion earlier, with stormwater. So there's some opportunities, including whether there's a consideration of the town establishing an enterprise fund. And that's something that we won't have ready for September. That would be a November piece.
Okay.
So I think, we could dedicate unless there is something else that one of the departments is thinking of that I don't have on the top of my head, we would pretty much dedicate the special town meeting just to the override.
That's not a bad thing. Okay, so, should we be calling another special town meeting? So we're looking at August dates now, but should we call a November 18th special town meeting anyways in order to cover those other items?
We've got time for that, haven't we?
What's that?
We've got time for that. haven't
We do.
Yeah, we don't have to make that.
We don't have to do it now. Okay. All right, so we've moved past sort of all of the budgetary items. The next part of the agenda has to do with the town administrator's goals and the senior tax work-off program. Before we get to that point, I think I'd like to call a brief recess, 5 or 10 minutes in case anybody needs a break, and allow everybody to kind of reset, and we'll come back in, let's see, it's 8:23 now. Why don't we come back at 8:30 and resume at that point?
I just had a quick question. Can you
Yeah.
see how many attendees are in the Zoom meeting tonight?
Yep, let me see. I have, of the people who aren't us, right?
Yep.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 people, and one of them is our town clerk. Okay.
So it's a total of 15 citizens, non-town people that are paying attention tonight.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna have a brief recess, and we'll be back at 8:30. hitting your button. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Scott. All right, so we are now back in session. It is 8:35 PM. And just a reminder, this is the Town of Paxton Select Board meeting here in the training room at the Public Safety Complex. Next up on the agenda is we have the FY25 Town Administrator's Goals. And so I would like to kick that over to Heather. She has put something together already to try to address goals for the coming year. Heather, go ahead. Assuming that you're there. I don't see.
Her picture's up and she's on mute.
Okay, so she might not be there yet.
Over that.
We are coming back just a hair late because there was a line for the restroom. But it is now 8:36, so we should be rolling.
Can you hear me, Julia?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes.
Perfect. All right, so we have up your proposed TA goals. Do you want to?
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Can we go over these at another meeting?
We certainly can. Heather's having a hard time hearing me.
Can you hear me, Heather?
Oh, so sorry, I was muted. Can you hear me now?
I can. I was trying to figure out, I'm like, why is she asking me to unmute? They're not talking.
All right, so since I have unmuted myself, let me just reiterate that we are back in session. It is 8:37 PM, and this is a meeting of the Town of Paxton Select Board here in the Public Safety Complex. So sorry, that was my Zoom error. So Heather, we've moved on to the next topic, which is the Town Administrator's Goals. And Carol had asked if maybe we can talk about this at the next meeting, but do you want to just give us a quick understanding of what you have put together, and then we can put it on an agenda for the next meeting?
Yes, and that was my goal, is to have the board discuss this at the next meeting. I just wanted to propose something so that you have time to review this. So last year, I think we might have been a little overambitious with, I don't know, it's like 100 and something, it felt like, at least 70 or 80 goals. So this just kind of compiles down to 5. These are the top 5 that I thought would be the most impactful for the town that I would propose to the select board. But again, just food for thought, and happy to take whatever the SB wants. I tried to break things down a little bit here. So one is, the zoning bylaws, which still has many steps to go to being approved. Town bylaws, still something we need to consider and work on. We regularly still get requests and questions about whether something was ever incorporated as a bylaw or not. And we often find documents that were not necessarily part of the compilation document, but were a bylaw. And then there's always the question of what is and what isn't. Employee recruitment and retention, going to be a very important one, I imagine, over the next few years as well. Town streets, that's one we still need to spend some time on. We have quite a few roads that are accepted, many others that are not accepted, and about 7 different documents that debate which is and isn't. So that would be some work to clean that up. And then the last piece is just, it's been a number of years since we adopted the charter. I know we talked about this a little bit last year, but the question comes back to the select board as to whether or not they want to put some kind of committee together to start taking a look at this to see if everything is working as it was originally envisioned, or if there are any changes or any things that could be done differently. So that's all I had on that piece.
Okay, so we'll take this under advisement then, and we can circle back at the next meeting. So Donna, would you put that on the agenda for the next meeting? Not the
25th.
Not the,
No.
yeah, the next regular meeting.
Yeah.
Please. Thank you.
Yes, please.
All right.
And then the next item is just the senior tax workout program. I would actually like to ask the board just to table this one more meeting.
there's some we've got a lot of questions on from our seniors on who's eligible, who's not, the amounts and so forth. I came across the document last week. I just want to spend a little more time to make sure I have all the comparisons and the numbers from other resources so that I can make sure I present it and propose it back to the select board so it benefits the most people.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we'll skip over then the senior tax work-off program. We'll come back to that when Heather is ready to bring it to an agenda. We have nothing under old business. I have some correspondence here. So we have one that was a very nice example of town departments working together. We got a fire chief sent in a note saying that the DPW mechanic, who happens to be a fairly new hire, went above and beyond to make sure that the fire inspector's car was up and running. The serpentine belt had broken. It was mentioned to the mechanic in the morning at the DPW, who said he would grab the belt while he was at the Ford dealer that day, and then much to the chief's surprise, when he returned that afternoon, the belt had already been installed and the vehicle was already back in service. So it was a big thank you for the assistance to Dom for taking care of this, even though he didn't need to jump on it right away. And we were truly appreciative of the prompt response. And I just think that that's an excellent example of two departments that are working together, especially in these trying times, to try and get things done. The other bit of correspondence I have that I will attach to the meeting material, or ask Donna or somebody to attach to the meeting material, are several emails that have come in from Mark Love expressing his concern and discontent with the information session, which took place on June 17th. Unfortunately, Mark left, so I'm not able to address it to him directly, but I will put these in with the meeting materials, and my response to this is, he specifically requested that I make a public apology for statements that were made at the 6/17 information session. I don't believe that there were any statements that require an apology, but I do want to say that I'm sorry if there's any misunderstanding. Certainly there was never an intent to hurt anybody's feelings, and if that was what occurred, then I am sorry for that. Beyond that, I have nothing further on the agenda here, except for I have a town administrator's report. Heather, do you have a report?
Yes.
Okay, let's go.
Okay, so it's part of the packet. I think it's the very end of it. So I have been playing with formats, so we'll see how everyone likes this one. We might have to change it again. It's pretty brief. It's only 2 pages. So employment opportunities, so you can still find them on the website. Right now, it's just a full-time water technician operator and after-school group leader. Volunteer opportunities, there's still several boards, committees, and commission spots that are available. I don't have any to highlight this week. Town business updates, so just 2 things for a change of program schedule. So the Richards Memorial Library will be closed on Saturdays during August because of the budget restraints and staffing. And the scheduled concerts that Rec is holding for July 18th, 25th, and 22nd, I believe, are canceled. I'll double check those dates. There's 2 that are still going on. Did I get those 2 dates right? They're the 2 dates, Julia, that are going to be held are the ones for the 7 Saws. Do you have that in front of you?
I do.
I think it's like August 1st and 15th, maybe?
Yep, you got it right. August 1st and 15th.
Okay, so those are the only 2 that they're going to hold this year. Moving on, building department. So Cheryl, town services coordinator, has been out for a little while. She'll be out until about the 23rd of July. So if anyone needs anything, please reach out to my office or my cell phone to the report directly, and happy to help. I've been coordinating requests, quite a few requests actually, for septic plans. Cheryl always mentioned there was a lot of requests for them, but there are a lot of requests for septic plans. I've already had several trips down to her office to make copies for folks. So we're all set with that. I think we're getting caught up on scheduling. Anyone who's trying at home who is interested, anyone who's trying to schedule an appointment or an inspection time with the building commissioner, we do have a scheduling app that we've been trying to use, so it consolidates all the requests in one spot. Allows people to book up to 7 days in advance, and it doesn't allow you to book a time if he's not available or if someone else has already booked it. It does give people about 16 available appointments a week to choose from evenings to Saturday mornings. So I'm hoping that will help. We have quite a few people who have started using it. So I'm just trying to consolidate all of the requests to one spot to make it easier for everyone. On the building side, other project updates. So the zoning bylaws, everything's been submitted on that piece to get the rest of the $75,000 reimbursement. We already had quite a bit of it. It was just the end piece that we were waiting on. We still anticipate that we're going to have legal review. We weren't able to include as part of that. It just wasn't timely. The estimated cost from legal is about $2,500 to $3,000. That will end up covering for them to review the zoning bylaws, which is not bad at all. Let's see, IT grants. So we're still working with the records retention and storage. We had modified the scope a little while ago and got it extended to the end of December. We're working on the first phase with King Information Systems. They're actually going to be in town the end of July and early August. They go through pretty much all of our files and evaluate what we have, give us a record, categorize it, as well as let us know what we need to do with the individual files, whether there's things that we can destroy under the public records retention, or whether there's things that might be worth scanning in, such as septic plans and so forth. And we're pretty excited to get started in that project so we can start getting things available online so people have more access to them and have them available when they're looking for them. FY24 wrap up. So right now we're just finishing things up with the town accountant. She'll be in tomorrow, making sure we have anything encumbered we need, finishing any final remaining invoices. Last expenditure report, July 8th, looked pretty good. We should have some funds left over in the town administrator, health insurance, and reserve fund. Some others will have a little bit left as well. We did run into very tight numbers for the water enterprise fund. We do not anticipate, based on what we're seeing right now, that we're going to have any retained earnings coming out of this current fiscal year, because things came unexpected. Some numbers came in lower than we anticipated and others came in higher. So that is very tight. Once we get through FY24, I'll be working with Travis and Tiffany in the water department to make sure that everyone's on the same page and things look good for FY25. On those numbers, if we need to, we can always go back at one of the next town meetings and make adjustments as needed. Let's see, revenues were looking good as of May 31st. It's the last revenue report we have right now until things finalize in a few more days. Motor vehicle excise exceeded expectations by about 89,000. Cemeteries were still under by a little over 1,500. Building permits were up about 32,000 higher than we estimated, which is great because last year we were right on the penny. Other licenses and permits saw an increase of about $10,000 over, and investment income was booming at 53K. But investment income, just for folks, because I know this has come up even at FinCom meetings, so everyone knows, this is not something that we're always going to make this much money on, both with the interest rates may not stay that high. Plus right now we're very lucky because we have funds that stay in the bank regularly. And a large contributor to those funds is actually the money for the fire truck from ARPA. Once we pay for the fire truck, we won't have those funds stagnant in the account, accruing as much interest as it currently is. FY25 fiscal year has begun. Things are looking good. We've got the budget pieces added in. Let's see here. Currently in process paying initial annual bills, so that you have debt, retirement, health insurance, schools, annual membership dues, insurance, others. And Larissa and Donna are wrapping up the books and starting 25. And that's all I have. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Heather?
No.
No? All right. Thank you, Heather. All right. Public comment. Any comments from the public? None? And so at this point then, I will request a motion. It needs to be done by a roll call vote. So the motion will be to move from regular session, enter into executive session for the purposes of discussing strategy in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, being the police lieutenant, pursuant to MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21-2, and returning to regular session only to adjourn the meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, Kirk?
Aye.
Carol?
Second. Aye.
And I will vote aye, and we'll have a quick 5-minute recess just to allow the room to clear, and then we'll move into executive session. Heather, I'll shoot you a new link.
And just so you know, I was able to clear the ARPA funds